everyone, welcome to Adaptive Fashion Vids. Today we're going to be learning how to adapt shoes for swelling. Here is the pair of tennis shoes that I'll be using today, and this project will be beneficial for someone who has more swelling in their feet and would like to have some slits in the sides to allow for that swelling, and this can also make it a bit easier to get the shoes on and off. So here I'm just showing the kind of makeup of the shoe. I'm going to take my scissors and just do a slit in the back of the shoe, and this could be as small or as large as you want, just depending on your needs. So a longer slit would allow for a greater opening, whereas a smaller slit would not allow for as big of an opening as a larger split. So I'm just taking my scissors and I'm going to be making 2 cuts on each side of the shoe and then the one in the back of the shoe. And again, you can make these as big as you want, and you can do fewer or more just based on your needs. And here are the slits on this side of the shoe, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and it doesn't have to be exact, just so it functions about the same as the other side. So I'm going to do it around the same place, just cutting the slits to about the same length as well. And as you can tell here, this does allow a bit more flexibility in the opening of the shoe. So as you can see in the previous clip, this did leave some raw edges around where I'd cut. So to hide those raw edges, keep them from fraying, and really hide that red piece of foam in between the layers of the shoe, I thought maybe getting the embroidery thread and sewing needle and pushing this through, kind of going around those raw edges, I thought that might be a good idea. It was not. It did not work as well as I thought it would. So I'm taking the needle here and just showing how I did it. Maybe it could give someone else a better idea on how to do this, but for me, it did not work. So I really pushed through, and I tried pushing with the table just because I didn't have much grip on the needle. That got it through, but it was still very difficult to push through and just didn't work for me. I did not want to have to do this throughout the entire process, so that just was not a practical solution. So I went back to the drawing board, and you can see that in the next clip for the next solution. So my next idea involved the hot glue gun. This did work. I did find this to be a relatively simple solution. However, I would not recommend this if you have any kind of reduced sensation in your fingers, as it could lead to a burn. So here I'm just taking my hot glue gun and going on those outer layers of the foam. And some areas had a gap where I was able to get some glue in between the layers just to have that extra secure hold. But I just put some glue on the outside and then used the hot glue gun tip to spread it around, just so that there's a thin layer of glue all around the outside edge of that foam. And it did cool pretty quickly just because it wasn't too much glue. So I'm using my fingers to really pat it down to make sure it gets everything really good and sealed, and that there's no rough edges on the inside of the shoe, just to prevent any kind of skin irritation. And this is a good time to remind those who have reduced or absent sensation in their feet or ankles to perform skin checks regularly, especially when trying new shoes or modifying existing shoes. So there are things that you can do to reduce your risk of pressure injury, and that is one of the things to do, is performing those skin checks. Also, when you're doing these modifications, just making sure you feel around the edges to make sure that there is nothing poking the skin, or that would increase the risk of those pressure injuries. Also, wearing socks above the level of the shoe in the modification can reduce friction that may occur between your feet and the shoe, which could reduce your risk of pressure injury. So after I get all of the glue spread out with the hot glue gun tip, I'm going to start pressing around with my fingers, And as I go around the edges, I'm noticing that it is not hot. So it is slightly warm, but it is not hot, so it's not burning me. So I'm going around the edges, making sure to hold that together, just to make sure that foam piece doesn't separate. And then I'm going over the top to make sure that there is nothing poking out and that everything is sealed together. So I'm just using my fingers to press around there and make sure that this aligns just for the aesthetic purpose of this, but also that it'll not rub up against the back of the heel. And I'm going to repeat the process around all of those slits. It was more evident here where the foam pieces had more layers and more of a gap between those layers. So I'm taking the hot glue gun and filling in that gap just for some extra security to make sure those layers don't come apart any more than they are. So this glue is intended to hold those layers together, and then we'll put some more glue on the outside edge just to seal all of the layers together at the end. So I'm going to repeat this process all the way around the shoe, and I'm going to speed up the next clip just so you can see the process of doing all of it. Here I noticed there was some glue that was poking out, so I went ahead and took my scissors and cut that extra glue off just to prevent any kind of additional skin irritation potential. So I'm just continuing to glue around those edges, making sure that there is no extra glue on the outside of the shoe. Because the glue dries clear, any of the layers that are on the inside of the shoe will now be visible from the outside of the shoe. So for some shoes, this might be the same color as the shoe, but for this shoe, it is red on the inside. So that was something that I thought maybe someone might want to cover up. So I wanted to offer that solution as well. So because I didn't have any paintbrushes at home, I went ahead and used a Q-tip to get some gray paint, and I will paint over the outside layer of the glue here. So I'm using my Q-tip just to get some paint and pat down on the hot glue that has already dried, and I'll let that paint air dry. And I did find that the paint stuck to the hot glue pretty well, and that's just showing how it looked. So I'm going to use this paint to go all around the outside layer of that hot glue. And this is what the slit looks like before it air dries. And I'm just going to go around the shoe and repeat the process, just painting all of those slits. And this is what it looks like at the end. So the paint did cover up the red pretty well, but it is still showing through some. So that is something that you could go back and do another layer of paint on top of, just to make sure that red doesn't show through if that's something that you don't want. For more information about adaptive fashion and beauty, please visit the resource page at unitedspinal.org. Thanks for watching.